The studio lights had barely warmed the stage when it happened. Angelina Jolie posed composed, draped in midnight black rose from her seat like a shadow about to explode. A breathless hush swept across the room. Joy Behar's face froze. Mid-sentence caught between confusion and disbelief. Gasps echoed from the live audience. Cameras kept rolling. Producers did not dot, and then chaos, a tense murmur rippled through the panel as Jolie's heels clicked with defiance across the floor. Security moved too late. The moment was gone, already immortalized by a dozen iPhones and a stunned silence that felt like thunder. The view had just turned into a battleground. Did she just walk off? One co-host whispered under her breath. Eyes wide. Joy Behar sat in stunned silence, blinking as though trying to rewind time. Something had cracked, and not just the segment, but what led to this collapse. What could cause Angelina Jolie, Hollywood royalty, humanitarian icon, to erupt so violently, so publicly, in front of millions? The answer lies in the moments they never intended you to see, that it was supposed to be a celebration. Angelina Jolie had agreed to appear on The View to promote her latest humanitarian initiative, bold campaign aimed at protecting refugee children in war-torn regions. The producers advertised it as a heartfelt conversation, warm, safe, controlled, but behind the cameras, tension already simmered. Joy Behar, never one to avoid confrontation, had her own plan. As Jolie sat in the green room, flipping through her notes, producers whispered about Joy's opening angles, something about foreign policy, something provocative. Jolie's team had requested to avoid politics. Joy didn't care. She can't just float in here on wings of virtue, Joy had muttered. Backstage, let's see if she can handle some heat. The stage was a trap in disguise. From the moment the interview began, smiles were painted on with trembling brushes. The applause felt too loud, the lighting too sharp. Jolie's words came measured, her tone soft, but Joy's eyes were searching, hunting for a fault line. And then, it came. A shift. A sideways question about Jolie's past diplomatic meetings. One she didn't expect. One that turned the room colder. The mask had begun to slip, but no one knew just how far it would fall. The moment started with a smile, sharp, thin, and cold. Joy Behar leaned forward, her voice deceptively casual. You've met with world leaders, Angelina. But how does that qualify you to speak on American foreign policy? The air thickened. Jolie blinked, her lips parted slightly, as if the question had struck her physically. She glanced to the audience waiting, watching. Somewhere in the back, a camera operator adjusted his focus, sensing something was shifting. Angelina's voice, calm but firm. I've seen what war does to children, Joy. I don't need a title to speak on suffering. Joy didn't flinch. But isn't that emotional rhetoric? Policy isn't about feelings. A flicker in Jolie's eyes. Hurt, rage, control. You call it rhetoric, she replied. I call it witnessing. Maybe if more people felt something, fewer children would be dying. Gasps scattered across the audience. Co-hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One coughed, another looked down at her cue cards, but Joy pushed harder. Do you think it's responsible to sit here and act like you're an expert, or is this just another performance? Something cracked. Jolie's expression hardened, her breath stilled. A storm gathered behind her, silenced on, then everything began to unravel. It happened in seconds, but it felt like slow motion. Angelina Jolie leaned forward, her voice a blade cloaked in velvet. You invited me here to speak on children dying in conflict zones. If your plan was to mock that, then this was never an interview, it was a setup. Joy opened her mouth, but the words never came. Jolie stood. The audience froze. You could hear the shift of her chair, the rustle of her dress, the sharp inhale from someone in the front row. Then came the low. Devastating. I don't need to be lectured by someone who's never set foot in a refugee camp. The panel gasped. Joy's jaw clenched. Producers stood up from behind the cameras. One of them motioned to late. Jolie turned, her heels slicing the silence as she walked off the set. Security approached. A staffer tried to intercept her near the stage exit. She didn't stop. She didn't look back. Joy sat frozen. One co-host whispered, "Are we live?" They were. The broadcast stayed on for 3 more seconds, just enough to catch Joy's stunned face before cutting to a shaky commercial break. By then, Twitter had already exploded. The internet didn't wait for facts. It ran on fire. Within minutes, Angelina on The View was trending worldwide. Clips of the confrontation, some grainy, others crystal clear, spread like a contagion. Millions watched, replayed, dissected every word, every breath, every blink between Joy and Angelina. One clip, filmed by an audience member, showed the exact moment Jolie stood. You could hear someone gasp, "She's really leaving." Another angle caught Joy's face, shocked, reddened, lips pressed tight like a dam about to break. Then came the reactions. Celebrities took sides. Politicians weighed in. Advocacy groups praised Jolie's refusal to be silenced. Late-night hosts scrambled to rewrite monologues. An official statement from The View came hours late to sterile corporate, forgettable, but Jolie's response wasn't a black and white photo posted to her social media, her holding the hand of a child in a refugee camp. Dust in the background, no caption that said more than words ever could. Joy returned to the show the next day, opening with a joke. Well, that escalated quickly. The audience laughed awkwardly, but something had shifted. This wasn't just TV drama. It became a symbol. A woman walked off live television not for ego, but for principle, and the world saw her do it. The dust had settled. But the echo remained. Days later, media outlets still ran the footage. Headlines blurred between outrage and admiration. Jolie hadn't just walked off a talk show, she had drawn a line in the sand, one that audiences, critics, and even political commentators were still trying to process. In the aftermath, some called it a stunt, others called it bravery, but beneath the noise was a quieter truth, one that stuck with viewers long after the segment ended. It wasn't about ego, it wasn't about pride, it was about refusal. Refusal to let suffering be minimized. Refusal to let performance swallow purpose. Joy Behar continued her show. The chair where Jolie once sat remained noticeably empty for a week. Silent, unclaimed, and she returned to the field. Cameras caught her days later in Jordan, helping unload supplies. No press conference, no apology tour, just presence. Some say television is theater, that every moment is manufactured. But sometimes really something real cuts through. A crack. A confrontation, a choice. And now, one question lingers in every newsroom, every dressing room, every green room in America. Will Angelina Jolie ever return to live television, or did The View show us all exactly why she shouldn't? She sat in silence long. After the cameras cut, behind the curtain, Angelina's hands trembled, but not from fear, from restraint. The kind of restraint it takes to stand in a room built to discredit you, and walk out without letting them break you. Outside the studio, a car waited. The city moved on, but she didn't, not yet. Was I too harsh? She asked her publicist quietly. The answer didn't come because truth doesn't need validation. In the days that followed, Jolie's team received thousands of letters, mothers, activists, former refugees, all saying the same thing. Thank you for not staying silent. And Joy. In a later episode, she referenced the incident only once. Some guests don't like tough questions, but it wasn't about questions. It was about dignity. The screen had become a battlefield, and for once, the audience didn't cheer for conflict. They cheered for the one who chose to walk away from it. Jolie didn't slam a door, she opened one. For every woman told to smile through disrespect, for every advocate told to sit down and stay in their lane. And maybe, just maybe, that walk-off was the most powerful speech she's ever given. The velvet chair remained empty, but its silence spoke louder than applause. The View moved on segment after segment, guest after guest, but none could erase the tension left behind. The ghost of that confrontation lingered in every camera pan, every forced laugh, every shift in tone. And the public noticed. Jolie's departure wasn't a scandal, it was a signal, one that pierced through noise and ratings. She reminded the world that even in the age of media manipulation, some moments can't be spun. Some truths won't sit quietly. Producers debated inviting her back. Ratings had spiked. The buzz hadn't faded. But deep down, they knew she wouldn't return. Not because she couldn't, but because she didn't need to. That walkout became legend. A modern myth written in real time, by a woman who chose conviction over comfort, message over media. As the news cycle shifted, one question endured, not just in studios, but in living rooms, classrooms, and boardrooms. What happens when the one who's supposed to perform refuses? In a world built on spectacle, Angelina Jolie didn't raise her voice, she walked away, and somehow, the silence she left behind was deafening. Weeks passed, but the footage never faded. Clips of the moment were etched into the internet's bloodstream, looped, memed, dissected frame by frame. But beneath the viral noise was something quieter, something heavier. For young women watching, it was a lesson. For survivors of gaslighting and dismissal, it was validation. For every person who'd ever been told to calm down, to stay polite, it was a revelation. She didn't scream, she didn't crumble. She stood. And then she left. In that silence, Jolie rewrote the rules not just for celebrity interviews, but for what it means to hold your ground on national television. Executives took note, publicists whispered, future guests began asking for pre-interview boundaries. The echo reached farther than anyone expected, and though Angelina never addressed the moment again, the world kept returning to it not for gossip, not for scandal, but for clarity. Sometimes, one act of refusal can expose the entire machine. Sometimes, a single step off stage speaks louder than an hour in the spotlight, and in that brief, unscripted moment, Angelina Jolie reminded the world, grace is not weakness, and silence, when chosen, can be the loudest answer of all. Months later, the conversation was still alive. Documentaries dissected the moment, podcasts debated the motives, opinion columns polarized audiences, yet through it all, one undeniable truth emerged. Angelina Jolie had changed the conversation about celebrity, activism, and accountability forever. Her walk-off was a breakthrough. Behind closed doors, talk show hosts reconsidered their questions, producers rewrote scripts. The line between performance and principle blurred, and somewhere in the middle of that chaos, Jolie kept working off-screen, off social media, away from the glare. She chose impact over image, because in a world obsessed with optics, she proved that sometimes the greatest power lies in the moments. You don't perform. The View had lost a guest. The world had gained a symbol, a woman who refused to be silenced, who turned a single act of defiance into a lasting testament. And as the cameras keep rolling, and as new stories unfold, one thing remains certain. Some moments don't just change a show, they change history. Now, years later, that moment still echoes. It's no longer just a viral clip or a news headline, it's a marker in cultural history, a line drawn in the shifting sands of celebrity and truth. Angelina Jolie's walk-off became more than rebellion, it became a rallying cry. For every voice silenced, every truth dismissed, and every story buried beneath the noise, the View stage never forgot her absence. Neither did the viewers who saw something raw, real, and undeniable. In a world built on spectacle and spin, Jolie showed us another way, that sometimes the most courageous act is not to stay and argue but to stand, and walk away with your integrity intact. And that, above all, is the story worth telling, because in that silence, she spoke volumes, and we're still listening. The cameras faded, but the impact did not. That single act, walking away instead of staying, resonated far beyond the studio walls. It became a symbol of resistance in an era hungry for authenticity. Critics debated, fans rallied, but through all the noise, one thing was clear. Angelina Jolie redefined what it means to hold power in the spotlight. No longer just an actress or activist, she became a beacon for anyone tired of empty conversations and staged debates. The world watched and learned that sometimes silence is louder than words, that sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. And as the story continues to unfold, one truth remains: the most unforgettable moments aren't scripted, they're chosen. And Angelina Jolie chose hers in a way that no one could ignore. The story didn't end with the walk-off, it rippled out, touching lives and sparking conversations. Across dinner tables and boardrooms alike, people began asking harder questions, not just about celebrity, but about respect, boundaries, and truth. Jolie's defiance became a mirror reflecting society's discomfort with confrontation and change. Networks reconsidered their format. Audiences demanded more honesty. Guests prepared differently. In an age where performance often masks reality, her choice exposed the cracks. She reminded us that sometimes the greatest power lies not in words spoken, but in the courage to walk away. And long after the cameras stopped rolling, that moment continued to inspire, because real strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet refusal to be complicit. And in that refusal, Angelina Jolie gave the world a lesson it won't soon forget. The silence after the storm was deafening. In that empty space, a new narrative began to take shape, one about courage, conviction, and consequence. Angelina Jolie had rewritten the rules of engagement, not with fiery words, but with a single decisive act. Producers scrambled to understand what went wrong. Critics argued over who was right, but the audience, they witnessed something rare: authenticity cutting through the noise. That walk-off became a symbol, a reminder that sometimes refusing to play the game is the most powerful move of all. As the world watched, the question lingered: what price are we willing to pay for integrity? And in that question lies the heart of the story, because when the cameras stopped rolling, the real drama had just begun. Years from now, historians will point to that moment not for its drama, but for its meaning. Angelina Jolie didn't just walk off a set, she walked into history. Her act of defiance transcended celebrity gossip, becoming a powerful statement about standing firm in the face of opposition. It sparked debates about respect, power, and the role of voices often silenced in mainstream media. The echoes of that day still ripple through talk shows, social media, and cultural discourse. And for those who witnessed it live, it wasn't just entertainment, it was a lesson, a reminder that sometimes the strongest message comes not from what's said, but from what's refused. And in that refusal, Angelina Jolie found her truest voice.